Jai Shri Krishna. The dialogue opens with a question from Arjuna. Evam satat yuktaye. O Krishna, those who worship you with sincere, undivided devotion, and those who meditate on the formless, omniscient, and unmanifest, which one of these is the better knower of yoga? This is the most common question usually asked by a person during his pursuit in spiritual journey. The anxiety to explore the relative worth of the two types of worshippers has been a perennial quest for many people. Arjuna wants to know the comparative relevance of the devotional services offered to the personal God and contemplation upon the unmanifest divinity. As a student of Vedic tradition, Arjuna has been always taught that the Supreme Soul is attributeless, formless, omniscient, and omnipresent. But after visualizing the God's cosmic form, his old concept has taken a new meaning. Although throughout the conversation so far, Shri Krishna has mentioned many times on the worship of the personal form of God, but apparently Arjuna has missed the inner meaning of his statement. He is convinced that devotion to personal God is indeed the best approach in spiritual journey, but he still wants to confirm it from Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna tells Arjuna, Maya Vishya Mano Jema. O Arjuna, those who concentrate their mind on me, live in unity with me, they are the knower of yoga. He also gives his opinion about the devotion to the unmanifest and says that those who worship the imperishable, omniscient, and eternal with complete self-control, they also reach me. As a matter of fact, in spiritual pursuit, as the worshipper makes progress in spirituality from less awareness to increased awareness, the one being worshipped also changes till he goes into the shrine within his own self. It is really difficult to draw a line between the worship of Saguna and the meditation on the Nirguna, at which point one ends and the other starts. In the process of worshipping Saguna, means God with form and shape, we actually meditate on Nirguna, the formless, who hides behind the Saguna. So, by being devoted to either one is indeed worshipping the both at the same time. It is after performing the worship of Lord with form and shape for some time, when we learn to live in the awareness of the divine, we understand the ideal behind the idol. The worship of God with form and shape spontaneously leads the person to the worship of that which is at the heart of entire creation. For example, in some states of India, especially Maharashtra and Bengal, there is a Visarjana ceremony which really forms the culmination of worship. Around the Navratra time, people worship various forms of gods and goddesses made of clay. After the worship for 9 days, all the deities are taken in a procession to the river or to the nearby sea coast for Visarjana. The Visarjana literally means giving away the concept of forms and names. It is like rising above the worship of idol to the ideal, from less awareness to the increased awareness. In this reference, Swami Vivekananda has also given a very good example. He says that a man, while going towards the sun, takes a new photograph after every 1,000 miles and disregards the previous one till he reaches very close to the real sun. All the pictures taken during the journey, although a little different from each other, are true. Only they are made to appear different by the changing conditions of time and space. Similarly, when a sincere devotee gets closer to the experiential knowledge of the Supreme Self, he needs less and less help in the form of signs and symbols for concentration. He accelerates himself to a specific level of awareness where he feels the presence of God to be the essentiality of everything. There is a story in our Puranas which explains this concept more clearly. Once Lord Rama, the God incarnate, asked his great devotee Hanuman, "O son, tell me, what is your relationship with me and how you meditate on me?" Shri Hanuman replied, "O Rama, sometime I look upon you as Purna, the undivided one. But at other moment I see your presence reflecting through everything and everybody, and I look upon myself as a fragment of you. At other times I meditate on you as my divine master and think of myself as your humble servant. When, however, I am blessed with inner unity and the experiential knowledge of the Self, then I feel that I am Thou and Thou art I, Tvat Tvamasi. It is indeed a fact that in due course of spiritual progress, the Supreme Self reveals itself by itself to itself. I will repeat it again. The Supreme Self reveals itself by itself to itself. I like what Dr. Radha Krishnan says in this reference. He says, once you realize that the reality is something to be felt, something to be experienced, you really don't attach much importance to the method by which you attain it. They become subordinate and merely instrumental. It's really so true that people give different names to God in the process of their spiritual pursuit. The type of approach differs from one individual to another depending upon his own personal level of understanding. that's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, it is just important to have faith in God. Many are the names of God, and many are the methods through which one approaches the divine. Absolute truth is indeed beyond the reach of sensory perception. It's formless, nameless, and inexplicable. So either the person has to rise above the finite boundaries and experience the infinite, or to bring the infinite to the level of finite perception in some form and shape. The ancient religious literature explains that the sages who wrote the Vedic hymns have described the God as omnipresent, omniscient, and inexplicable. But later on, the sages like Vashishta, Vyasa, Kashyap, Atri, Bhardwaj, Angresa, and Bhrigu believed in the God as Saguna and Nirguna both, means the God with form and shape and God without form and shape. These wise sages had deep personal experience of both Saguna and Nirguna, but never had any unnecessary arguments about it. The reason why Shri Krishna expresses here the concept of Saguna and then immediately the concept of Nirguna, because he knows that in the process of spiritual growth, it is a natural progression to move from one concept to another. For example, in the process of meditation on the unmanifest, we move from the subtle to the gross, from the indwelling self to the cosmic self, while in the other approach of personal worship of God, we move from the gross to the subtle, and from the subtle to the gross again, with an experience of realizing the omniscience of the Lord in the universe. In reference to his explanation about the worship of God with form and shape and God without form and shape, Shri Krishna expresses his concern for those devotees who meditate on the omniscient, inexplicable, and unmanifest for the experiential knowledge of the self in yogic unity. By using the words Klesho Adhik Taras Desha, he alerts mankind that the experience of yogic unity in transcendence is very difficult as long as a person holds his identification with the physical body. This attachment with physical body starts right after birth and becomes stronger as we grow older. Attachment with the body is Dehe Abhimana, the feeling of I and mine, which comes as an obstacle in the process of communion with God. It becomes a curtain between the Nara and Narayana. I like these words of a great Sufi poet, Umar Khayyam. He says, "There was a door to which I found no key. There was a veil past which I could not see. Some talked a while of me and thee there seemed, and then no more of thee and me. It's thee in me who works behind. I lifted my veil to find a lantern amid the darkness and cried, "It's me in thee blind." In order to experience the Holy Communion in yogic unity, the feeling of I and mine has to be replaced with thou and thine. Shri Krishna, the knower of human psychology, tells a very wonderful method for this shift in awareness. He tells Arjuna just to remain aligned with the source of life and do all the work with the guidance of the self. It is a subtle training of accepting the presence of Lord and also living in the consciousness of God at the same time. In this reference, Swami Chinmayananda gives a very good example. He says, "A dancer never forgets the rhythms of the drum to which she steps. A musician is ever conscious of the background hum." Living with the consciousness of the divine educates the mind to operate directly under the guidance of the Supreme Divinity, and the alignment with the source of life is experienced from moment to moment. Perfection in yoga is definitely the perpetual absorption in the Lord. It is the intimate relationship with the Supreme Indwelling Self which strengthens the bond with the Lord and brings transformation in the attitude of the individual, where I and mine is naturally replaced by thou and thine. In reference to the methods of concentration on the self, Shri Krishna explains some methods. Those can be useful in training of yogic communion. He starts with Abhyas Yoga. Abhyasa literally means constant practice with repeated effort of living in the awareness of the divine. It is to repeat the process of introducing a spiritual thought to the conscious and subconscious faculty of mind. It is to repeat the name of the divine consciously and witness the whole process. Constant remembrance of the Lord purifies the mind and creates the most intimate relationship with the divine. Men literate or illiterate, ignorant or enlightened, rich or poor, everyone can use this method with equal benefit. As discussed earlier, it may sound strange to some people, but it is the truth that the progressive realization of the Supreme Divinity comes easily by the simple and natural method of remembering the Lord perpetually. Practice surely makes someone nearly perfect in due course of time. Although in the initial stages it demands conscious efforts, but gradually it just becomes second nature, and the presence of the consciousness of the God is felt at all times. By placing the yoga of practice up front in hierarchy, Shri Krishna has presented a wonderful method of meditative unity for people from all sections of society. He makes it very clear that the true devotion and yogic communion becomes possible for everyone with genuine faith, willingness, and acceptance. When we accept to live in the consciousness of the divine, we naturally dedicate all our work as a service to the Divine, which liberates us from the bondage of I and mine, and our every action becomes the yoga of action. In explanation of the various methods for unity in yoga, Shri Krishna concludes that knowledge is indeed better than that practice which is followed without proper insight. Meditation is, of course, superior to knowledge, but renouncing attachment to the fruits of action is even better. Tyaga chantirantaram means with renunciation, peace follows quickly. He tells Arjuna that all spiritual austerities should be performed with proper insight and knowledge. As a matter of fact, the scriptural knowledge which is not used in the functioning of day-to-day activities, that remains only information. It is of very little value. It is the meditative experience which reveals the inner knowledge of the self and helps in proper understanding of the scriptures. Meditation means to attend the thoughts with attention and intention. It is one of the greatest art of life, in which we become aligned to the source of life, to our own inner self and with others. Meditation is not merely a religious practice, it is a necessity of life. Just in order to live peaceful, healthy and harmonious life. It is one of the highest form of discipline which comes with the practice of living in constant awareness of the self. Generally, the goal in meditation is to observe the activities of mind and guide the mind and body into inner peace and silence. Although each and every person has the ability to meditate naturally, but in general, people find it very difficult to concentrate and meditate. For them, the meditation period goes waste, with the mind struggling to settle in the silence of the self. In general, the meditator has to struggle with the internal gossip. The inner gossip comes from our relationship with other people and from the activities of day-to-day life. Out of the total half hour of meditation period, they can really meditate only 1 or 2 minutes. The rest of the time, they are with their co-workers, friends, or in argument with their friends and relatives. Our entire lifestyle, the way we live and handle our day-to-day problems, actually determines the contents of meditation. Shri Krishna, the knower of human emotional makeup, understands this problem. That's why in the description of methods for yogic unity, he declares renunciation of attachment to the fruit of actions is the key for perfection in yogic unity. Detachment promotes inner silence and helps in meditative unity with the source of life. In reference to this concept of success in meditation with attitude of detachment in life, the great educationist Wayne Dyer says, "I find God by giving myself time every day. Through prayer or meditation, or whatever you call it, to go into another level of consciousness. I close my eyes and breathe. I center myself and empty my mind and begin to feel the love that is there when I quiet down enough to feel. As I do this, I transcend time and space, and I am in the very presence of God. This is to me is a direct daily experience of God, and it puts me into a state of harmony and bliss and transcends everything I have ever known. For inner peace and harmony, he adds, the highest spiritual act in life is to see yourself in everyone else and everyone else in you. To surrender yourself and see everyone's joy and suffering as your own. To detach yourself from the fruits of your labor and to simply see everyone else in the world as a part of you. You renounce all worldly attachments to everything and enjoy what God gives you. You just constantly flow through your life without getting attached to the results. The irony is that the less attached you are, the more you get. The more you keep circulating, the more keeps coming back to you. It is a flowing system. The attitude of performing actions without attachment is very difficult. It doesn't come all at once. It doesn't take place just by talking about it. There is a subtle training of being devoted to God and learning to live in the awareness of God. When the life becomes totally devoted to the Supreme Divinity, all our work becomes a service to God and to humanity. When we live in the unity with the Supreme Soul, the spirit of renunciation comes naturally and spontaneously. As the consciousness of the presence of the Divine blossoms, the entire lifestyle becomes a constant remembrance of the Divine. When the aspirant goes in perpetual unity with the Divine, the spirit of renunciation to the fruits of action takes place very naturally. The inner unity, peace, and security helps the individual rise above the futility of worldly name, fame, and the desires of recognition. As a matter of fact, the gospel of selfless action works as a remarkable tool in any method of worship, whichever the person decides to select for God realization and self-realization. Almost all the other methods revolve around it and draw their completeness from it. Renunciation to the fruits of all actions is indeed the touchstone of success in spiritual life. I like these words of Lao Tzu. He says, "Do your work and step back, the only path to serenity." After giving a short description of what is devotion and how we can become devoted to the Lord, Shri Krishna gives a detailed description about the hallmarks of a genuine devotee. These are the characteristic features of a man of sincere devotion and also the guidelines for spiritual progress. He starts with the word adveshta, which literally means no jealousy. A true devotee of the Lord, who is perpetually aligned with the essential nature of the higher self, he is very peaceful, secure, contented, and simply likes himself the way he is. He never compares and competes with anybody. He is also very generous, kind, caring, and compassionate. It is indeed a fact that anyone who is settled in unity with God, he naturally becomes settled in unity with the whole universe. He looks upon the entire creation as a living organism, united within the essentiality of the Supreme Lord. He is very friendly, loving, caring, and very sympathetic. Anybody who is aligned with pragya, which is a specific level of increased awareness, his conscious unity with pragya reflects itself in karuna, which is love, compassion, and generosity towards his fellow beings. The sympathetic attitude of sharing is the expressive aspect of spiritual intimacy one holds with his own inner self. The enlightened devotee of the Lord develops cosmic unity and touches the heart of entire creation with love and kindness. The other characteristic of a true devotee is samadukha sukhakshami, means balance in pleasure and pain, and also very forgiving. A true devotee of the Lord, who is grounded in the consciousness of the divine, he definitely becomes very strong, both psychologically and physically. Each new day brings something new to the life of an individual who lives in unity with God. He knows how to live in the tissue of the present moment and make the very best of everything as it comes along. This reminds me of some beautiful lines by a Chinese poet. Thousands of flowers in spring, cool breeze in summer, moon in autumn, snow in winter. If your mind is not clouded by unnecessary things, this is the best moment of your life. This is indeed a fact that anybody who feels secured within, he can live in perfect peace in the middle of all ups and downs of life. Shri Krishna has used the word santushta for contentment. There is no treasure equal to contentment in this world. The person who lives in the nature of the self, he becomes very appreciative and very thankful. A thankful heart is indeed a contented heart. I like these lines from Gitanjali by Tagore. He says, "Day by day, thou art making me worthy of the simple, great gifts that thou gavest me unasked. This sky and the light, this body and the life. Contentment is indeed a blessing of the divine. Contentment makes the life richer, broader, larger, and very enjoyable. It promotes inner wisdom, faith, courage, and also longevity. Anybody who is truly contented will not develop tensions, anxieties, insecurities, fears, and worries. Contentment is promoted from inner peace, security, and tranquility. There is a famous saying, "A contented person is not necessarily the one who has the best of everything, he just makes the best of whatever he has." Contentment can be recognized as inner enlightenment. I like these words of Lao Tzu. He says, when you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everybody will respect you. Chase after money and security, and your heart will never be at peace. Care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner. If you realize that you have enough, you are truly rich. Another important thing is that a person who lives in peace and harmony with his own self, he respects the law and order in society and also helps others to live in peace and harmony with each other. As a matter of fact, when the mind and intellect are anchored in divine, a person naturally works through the guidance of the divine. His inclination towards a virtuous, spiritual, and ethical living comes without much effort, and obedience to the moral law comes instinctively. He really doesn't have to wrestle to be ethical and spiritual. It happens very naturally. Anybody who is settled in the tranquility of the pure self, he lives a very peaceful and balanced life. All his work conforms to the maintenance of spiritual law of the divine. A serene joy radiates from his work. Equanimity and compassion for the humanity becomes a second nature to him. No one ever gets agitated by his words, and also he himself is not agitated by others. His inner peace and integrity is rooted in the consciousness of his faith and in the experiential knowledge of its realization. Shri Krishna glorifies the greatness of yogic unity in devotion and makes it very clear to Arjuna that a sincere devotee of the Lord is very skillful and meticulous. Excellency in work is a state of mind which comes from self-reliance and self-respect, and faith in our own selves and self-confidence comes from our faith in God and with our perpetual alignment to the source of life. Our experience of unity with the Supreme Soul gives us confidence, inner satisfaction, creativity, and perfection in each and every one of our activity. People, those who don't enjoy their work, they have definitely lost their conscious alignment with God in them. The inner emptiness results into lack of self-respect, self-reliance, self-confidence, enthusiasm, and creativity in work. They become very careless and sluggish and really stop taking pride in their work. The quality of their work goes down. It is indeed a fact that excellency in the performance of work is a clear reflection of the inner unity to the source of life. A person in unity becomes devoted to his work and performs all his duties with great enjoyment and enthusiasm. He takes pride in his work, and his work becomes very creative, enjoyable, and rewarding. He knows how to explore his unique abilities and to make the very best use of them. In reference to the emotional maturity, Shri Krishna tells Arjuna that a man who is grounded in unity with the self, he is very mature, impartial, and very determined. He makes quick, wise, and very mature decisions. Maturity is increased awareness and heightened intuition. Intuition, as the word explains itself, is education from within, which is revealed from the source of life by our own personal efforts. It is the grace of the divine which becomes revealed in the form of inner knowledge and maturity. In general, people believe that maturity comes with age. That is true to some extent. But it is also true there is a great majority of people, those who don't mature with age. Lack of maturity reflects lack of self-confidence, and lack of self-confidence reflects lack of faith in our own self. And overall maturity in life is in direct proportion to the alignment with the Supreme Soul. Shri Krishna tells Arjuna that a person who is firmly settled in the wisdom of the self, he becomes very enlightened. His emotional life is guided by the awareness of the Supreme, and his adjustment to the circumstances becomes quite spontaneous and natural. A true devotee of the Lord understands all the intrigues of life and also perfectly knows that he himself is the cause of every situation as it occurs. He never blames others for his failures and misfortunes. He neither complains nor worries over the inevitable that hides in the distant future. He goes beyond the trivial changes of day-to-day life. His experiential knowledge of the higher self liberates him from all sorts of pains and fears. In general, as we see, love for one person and hatred for the other comes up when we calculate the situation from our limited point of view. To like or dislike someone is totally personal conditioned behavior, which can be eliminated by living in the awareness of the higher self. A person who lives in the awareness of God, he lives in the awareness of the Lord in others also. He naturally becomes very friendly and very compassionate. Shri Krishna also tells Arjuna that a true devotee of the Lord maintains his balance of mind in honor and dishonor. As a matter of fact, human mind evaluates and equates a situation as honorable or dishonorable in direct proportion to the self-created gauge of conditioned thinking. A simple remark about someone's car or house can be considered as an appreciation and also a cynical criticism at the same time. Anybody who is aligned with the source of life becomes emotionally integrated, and he is not disturbed at the puny remarks made by other people. I really like what Fitzgerald has to say in this reference. The true test of a first-rate mind is the ability to hold two contradictory ideas at the same time. Alignment with the indwelling self dissolves all the boundaries of egocentric self and promotes the joy of living in eternity. There is a true incident from the life story of a saint who lived in a small cottage outside the town. One day, someone stole his cooking pots and pans and some other belongings. He went to the nearby police station to report the theft and to get some help. The police clerk was very rude to him, and he also wanted some bribe for writing the report. The holy man did not have any money, and also he refused to pay. The police clerk did not treat the holy man with any respect and actually ordered him to leave. It was only after a few months that the clerk's son became very sick. After all kinds of medical treatments, when the child's health was really going down, somebody suggested him to seek the help of the holy saint who lived outside the town. The police clerk decided to visit the saint. As he entered the cottage, he was shocked to see that the holy saint was the same person who had come to the police station earlier. He felt very ashamed of himself and requested the saint for forgiveness. On the other hand, the holy man had forgotten all about it. As a matter of fact, he himself came forward to bless the police clerk and his son for speedy recovery. The enlightened saints, those are always grounded in the consciousness of the Supreme Soul. They are usually very forgiving. The kindness and generosity of the Lord reflects through their words and deeds. It is indeed a fact that anybody who feels secure within his own self, he definitely lives in peace and harmony with others. He is always very caring, loving, and forgiving. The reason why some people cannot forgive others because they are very insecure and also lack the strength of forgiving which comes from the bonding with the self. On the other hand, for a true devotee of the Lord, who is always united within, for him to forgive and forget comes very naturally. A forgiving soul is indeed a blessed and liberated soul who enjoys constant unity with the Supreme. Again, here are some beautiful lines by Rabindranath Tagore. I sat alone in the corner of my house, thinking it too small for any stranger to come. But now, with thy grace, when the door is flung open, I feel there is room for the entire world. Forgiveness is a great gift of God. To forgive is to feel free, like a cloud wandering in the open sky. A forgiving soul is indeed a liberated soul. Shri Krishna also tells Arjuna that a sincere devotee of the Lord understands clearly that the life flows between the two opposites, pleasure and pain, loss and gain. He accepts life as it comes along. He believes in the truth that there is a purpose behind each and every situation, whether it's favorable or unfavorable. I really like these words of Viktor Frankl, a great German psychologist. He says, if there is a meaning in life at all, then there must be a meaning in suffering. He further says, no one should think that these considerations are unworldly and too far removed from real life. It is true that only a few people are capable of reaching such high moral standards. This strength of the enlightened devotee is called the inner awakening, which comes with the grace of the divine. Living in the remembrance of the Supreme Lord brings the experience of living in eternity, which is far above the changing phases of the material world. When the attitude towards life becomes enlightened, it naturally brings changes in the entire outlook of a person. He gives a totally new meaning to the ups and downs of life. The inner peace and tranquility of mind helps him to remain undisturbed in all situations and under all circumstances. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi supports this concept in these words. He says, just as a millionaire who has great wealth remains unaffected by the rise and fall of the market, so is the mind, which has gained the state of bliss consciousness through transcendental meditation, remains naturally contented on coming out from the transcendental state to the field of day-to-day activities. This contentment, being grounded in the very nature of the mind, does not allow the mind to waver and to be affected in pleasure or pain, nor allow it to become affected by attachment or fear in the world. This natural equanimity of the mind, even while it is actively engaged, is the state of steady intellect. Shri Krishna has used the word Mauni once again for the sincere devotee who knows how to observe silence. It is not only the silence of speech, it also refers to the silence of mind. Mauna is an alignment with the silence of the self, from where we receive guidance. About silence, I like these words of Gandhiji. Experience has taught me that silence is a part of spiritual discipline. Silence is both physical and a spiritual necessity. The time when I could hold best communion with God has been indeed during the time of silence, Mauna Vrata. Mauna Vrata heightens the awareness and makes one receptive to the inner knowledge and inner purity. Mauni is the one who observes silence. It stands for the enlightened devotee who has a total control over his speech and mind. The next hallmark of an enlightened devotee is inner integrity and determination. A true devotee of the Lord is very determined, confident, and sure of his each and every activity. For example, all the great teachers of the world, like Socrates, Plato, Buddha, Shankaracharya, Jesus Christ, and Mahatma Gandhi, have been the believers of their own thoughts. Gandhiji believed in himself and was always sure that every word which he spoke came from the honesty of his heart. He always believed that he worked in a co-partnership with God, and whatever has been true for him must be true for others also. He was always very positive, firm, and determined about his ideas because he felt that God has been working through him. In one of his speeches during his Dandi March, he has said, "I have faith in the righteousness of our cause and the purity of our weapons. Where the means are clean, their God undoubtedly is present with his blessings, and where the two combine, their defeat is an impossibility." A man of steadfastness becomes very familiar with the power of providence and knows how to express divine ideas through his words and deeds. His words are always very clear and influential. He is constantly aware of his goals and moves ahead with full confidence. Steadfastness, conformity, and self-reliance is a great virtue and a great blessing of the divine. Shri Krishna concludes that these 39 hallmarks of a true devotee are indeed the codes of primordial dharma. It should be the endeavor of everyone to live a life which is grounded in the consciousness of the Supreme Self and primordial dharma. Living a life in conformity to the voice of the Supreme Self is indeed living by the code of dharma. Performing all duties with the guidance of the Supreme Self is the dharma of mankind.